So this second presentation will highlight the relation between geographical indication and rural and community-based development. In the last 20 years, we have a lot of case studies that analyzed the GIs as tools of development, and researchers identify a lot of very positive local impacts. Interesting to underline is that depending on the local situation, the rationale behind the GI registration will be different. So here we have some rationales or justifications that the local stakeholders attribute to the GI registration. So for example, a local stakeholder will say that by registering the GIs, they expect a positive economic impact on the producers and on the value chain. Also, they expect that the GI will foster rural development, and also maybe that the GI will protect traditional knowledge, biodiversity, and landscape. So these expected impacts of GIs may follow one another in time, or also maybe be present all at the same time, depending on the different stakeholders, for instance. And these objectives that the GI may reach can be the starter for local producers or local actors' motivation to begin a project. So for each of them, now we will see the link between this expected effect and local development. So the first expected effect of GIs is a positive economic impact on the producers and the value chain. So to observe this impact, the common criteria are increase in selling price, increase in producers' income, or increase in production volumes. And the increases can be the result of two different mechanisms. So the first is that is based on commercial advantages that the producers and the sellers will enjoy with the fact that the registration will bring a reservation of the use of the name to them, and also will help them to fight against usurpation. The second mechanism is based on a greater competitiveness of the product that is obtained with a differentiation strategy. In terms of added value, these two mechanisms are very different. The first mechanism will protect or maintain an already existing added value. So it is more based on a defensive strategy. The objective is to protect something. For the second mechanism, the objective is not to protect an added value that is already existing for the product. The objective is to create a new added value for the product. So it is much more offensive strategy on the market. The first mechanism to protect added value is related to the very first and very original justification of geographical indication protection. So the idea is to protect producers by ensuring the quality of a product to consumers that already agree to pay a premium. And this premium can be attacked by usurpation on the market. So it has a negative effect for the authentic producers. So the GI registration will protect the premium and added value and protect the producers. The second mechanism is very different because there is no problem of usurpation, and the GI is used to decommodify the market. So in some way, it it is a more innovative situation. So here, for the second mechanism, the objective is to create a new added value and progressively reinforce the reputation of the product. So it's important to keep in mind these two very different mechanisms and strategies. They are based on different economic assets, and but the effects are the same. The objective is always to protect or create added value, and the criteria will be more or less the same. So increase in selling price, in producers' income, and in volumes of production. Let's see now some figures illustrating the economic impact of GIs in the European Union. So a wide study was published in 2012, and it shows that in the European Union, the price premium for GI products is on average 2.23 times the price of a comparable non-GI product. So you have distinction between wine, spirits, and other products, but on average, it's 2.23 times the price of non-GIs. So here the added value for GI products is significantly observed. It was a very wide study with a huge data compilation. So the figure of 2.23 times is a very consistent result. An illustration of this price premium is the olive oil from Baena in Spain. So the prices of the GI product that you can see in green on the graphics are always higher than the prices of a non-GI extra olive oil that you can see in blue on the graphics. And these prices are always higher even when the prices are fluctuating. So this is very important for producers. Another illustration of this premium of prices is an example from Vietnam, the fried calamari from Ha Long. So you can see that after GI registration, the selling price increased by 15%. So today the price is around $17 per kilo, and compared with the price of calamari without GI, it's a very good price, because without the GI, it's around $9.3 per kilo. I took several case studies of different products in different countries and continents, and I compared the economic impact of the GIs on producers and on the value chain. So we have, for the products, we have honey from Oku from Cameroon that we mentioned before, also Penja pepper from Cameroon, Kona coffee from Hawaii, Darjeeling tea from India, and wine from Valle dos Vinhedos in Brazil. So I will not enter into all the details, but you can just pick a line and follow the line to see the effect for very basic economic criteria, such as prices in green, volumes of production in red, and the number of producers in blue. So it depends on the case, but for some cases, the increase in prices or in number of producers is very important. So very, very significant impact and positive impact of GIs on producers and the value chain. But geographical indications are not only market tools, they are also rural development tools. So how can GI a GI contributes to rural and community-based development. It has been investigated, especially regarding the capacity of geographical indication dynamic to maintain active populations in rural areas and also valorize local resources with ecotourism, especially, and participate to the structuration of value chains and producer organization, and also to increase the support of government and facilitate funding of agriculture. So to illustrate how GI can maintain active population in rural area, we can take the example of Comté cheese in France. The GI specifications of this product impose a large number of small size cheese making units in the GI area. As you know, for a geographical indication, it's very different. It's kind of exceptional in the word of a label, a certification, and so on, because for geographical indications, you have an empty page at the beginning, and you decide, the producers decide themselves the specification with supervision of public actors, of course. So it is very different from what you can see in sustainable standards, for example, where it's the opposite dynamics. You need to comply with something, with a rule that you did not decide for yourself. For GIs, you start with nothing and you build up everything. So for the case of Comté cheese, they decided to impose in the book of specification, to impose a size for the cheese making units. And these small units are profitable because the product enjoys a very high product valorization on the market. So it's okay to have such small units, and small units guarantee high number of jobs and local employment. So you can see on the map, you have in green the GI area, and you can see with the spots the number of cheese unit, of cheese making unit, which is a high density. And you can imagine the local and rural dynamism of this region. And outside the GI area in white, you can see there are less units. For the valorization of local resources with ecotourism, there are many examples of how GIs can valorize local resources with tourism. So we already talked about the case of Espelette in France. Well, the pictures are just very eloquent, and they are the best ambassador of the product. So again, for figures about touristical attraction, you see the village itself is just 2,000 inhabitants. It's a very small village, but they receive more than 600,000 visitors per year, especially during the pepper festival. So it's a very attractive region for tourism. Another example from Vietnam, it's a Buon Ma Thuột coffee. We are in the middle center of the country, in the province of Dac Lac province. And Buon Ma Thuột city organizes now a coffee festival every 2 years. And they recently opened a World Coffee Museum to present coffee production in the world, and also in Dac Lac and Buon Ma Thuột region, and especially the history and know-how of minorities that were involved in coffee production for generations. So this festival and this museum are attracting visitors and tourists. But GIs also contribute to the structuration of value chains and producers' organizations. So of course, a GI project stimulates the creation of a local GI managing group, as we described, for example, in the case of Espelette. So what is this GI managing group? It is an interprofessional body. So interprofessional means that you will have not only farmers, it's farmers, processors, maybe collectors. You can also include traders if you want. You can also include a college of experts and public actors also. Maybe they will not have voting power, but they will be invited and participate to the assembly and the meetings. Usually the status of such a body is an association, but it depends on the legal framework of every country. The local GI managing groups are the essential element of sustainable, impactful GIs. Element number one is the existence of a GI managing group and capacitation empowerment of this group. So these GI managing groups will enable a collective strategy that will gather producers, processors, all the actors that I mentioned. It will also boost producer organization and representation in the value chain, or representation for public actors or agricultural services also. And this group will also increase the power of producers within the value chain. So we have here to illustrate some pictures, some photos of GI managing groups. So it's a GI managing group in Kintamani, Bali for coffee. So we have some of the first meetings of coffee farmers in Bali. It was in 2007, so it's 1 year before GI registration. So you can see on the last picture on the right, it's Kintamani Bali GI house. So it's a house that the local government gave to the GI managing group to enable farmers to meet and gather regularly. Some pictures, again, from Bali, but for another product. It's pictures from Ahmed sea salt from the eastern coast of Bali. So we have pictures of producers and the product, but also a picture on the right again, a picture of the very, very first meeting of about to introduce the concept of GI to producers. So it was in 2007 again, and yes, it was one of the very first meetings about the GIs. And we can see today for Ahmed salt that the pictures are different. We can see that the GI managing group opened a Ahmed Salt Center where they are making collective promotion of the product. We can see that the packaging changed a lot also. So the impact here is very visible. The last lever by which GIs can contribute to rural and community-based development is that the GI project will increase the support of the government to the region, and also the GI dynamic will facilitate funding of agriculture in the area. So the GI project most of the time and receive funding from central and local governments, especially for the elaboration phase. So the first activities in order to build the application. So we have examples here of the fundings from different countries in ASEAN for that were the fundings that were used to GI project. So in Vietnam, the Ministry of Science and Technology used the program 68 to fund a GI project. In Indonesia, the Ministry of Agriculture was developing, implementing a P2AP, which is a project about processing and trading of agricultural products. And also in Thailand, the program One Province, One GI, that was funding GI development. And we can say that the fact that the GI project is occurring in a region, and also that there is a GI managing group that is created, is perceived as a guarantee of local dynamism, and it will facilitate the access to credit, maybe to develop activities for the GI, but also to develop activities for maybe other projects, like developing a cooperative, or to sell product, or to develop collective trainings. So it can be also an access to fund agricultural activities that maybe are not directly linked to the GI itself. We have here illustration of these fundings and the support of government. On the left, we have the example of Kintamani Bali coffee again, where Kintamani producers receive funding from Bank Indonesia to develop collective processing until roasting and collective selling. So they could buy equipment to roast the coffee and buy packaging for the coffee. On the right, another example again from Ahmed, where so it's another bank, it's a Bank BRI, but they gave credit and they supported the Ahmed Salt Festival. So it's more for promotion and tourism. But it's another example of funding of agriculture and activities thanks to the GI. The third rationale behind GI registration is the potential of geographical indications to protect traditional knowledge, biodiversity, and landscape. So by doing this, actually the GIs indirectly play their role of tools of development. Indeed, if you protect such precious local resources, it is necessary to protect them for the sustainability of development process in the region, and especially in rural areas. The impact of GI on biodiversity is clearly illustrated here again with this example of Comté cheese that we already mentioned, Comté cheese from France. So the researchers measured the use of fertilizers and herbicides inside and outside the GI area. So we can see on the graphics, we have in blue the data for non-GI area, and in purple, the data collected inside the GI area. And we have the evolution through time. So we can observe that the use of chemicals, so fertilizers and herbicides, increased 2.5 times less rapidly in the GI area. So it increased, but it increased really less rapidly inside the GI area. And it is essentially because of the implementation of the book of specification that is restrictive for chemicals. The researchers also measured the number of animals and the number of botanic species inside the GI area, so it's a natural grassland, and outside the GI area, which are more artificial grasslands, and the figures are very significant. It's the biodiversity is really more important inside the GI area. The impact on landscape depends, of course, on the production techniques. We have here two examples. So on the left, we have a Vietnamese example, which is the lychee tier from Thanh Hoa, with the lychee trees that you can see on the picture. They are literally growing inside the water of the delta of the Red River. It is a very, very typical landscape of this rural area. And the reputation of lychee Thanh Hoa is that the fruits have a slight salty taste because of these trees growing in the water of the delta. And on the right, we have another example of how GI can maintain landscape. It's the case of sweet onion from the Cévennes in France, and we can see again an emblematic landscape of the Cévennes Valley with cultivation in terrace. So these elements that are structuring the landscapes are part of the book of specifications of these products. And so now, thanks to the GI registration, it will be maintained and protected and valorized through time. Finally, many GI products are so typical and so intensively linked to their geographical origin that they impact positively all the aspects of biodiversity, landscape, traditional knowledge. For example, this is the case of cow no rice from Lao IPR, where the GI specifications protect 7 varieties of glutinous rice, and also they valorize traditional practice of rice cultivation, and also landscape, because the book of specification is mentioning the cultivation in terrace. It is also the case for Ahmed sea salt in Indonesia. Ahmed salt production is a very localized, it's a very small area, and ancestral salt production. The salt producers themselves don't even know when it started. It's generations and generations ago. This production is it's a very perfect case study for origin-based product. We can just directly observe the combination of natural, local resources involved and human factors. For natural conditions, it is based on the materials the producers are using. So it's coconut trunk trees to make the salt evaporate and the water evaporate. They are filtering the water from the sea in this cone, which is composed of sand, mountain, very specific mountain soil and stones. So here the combination of natural and human factors is totally visible. So it's a very unique know-how of these producers, and we have a specific landscape of these salt production unit on the coast. So here for this product, we can really observe the impact of GIs to valorize and protect biodiversity, landscape, traditional knowledge. So to conclude this second presentation, we have explore 3 of the rationales that are behind the GI project, and rationale that make GIs tools for a community-based development. So GIs have a positive impact on economic dimension for the producers and the value chain by increasing incomes and structuring the value chains. The geographical indications also foster rural development. We have seen 4 different levers that can be activated within a GI project to foster rural development. And they also protect traditional knowledge, biodiversity, and landscape. So this third rationale is more an indirect rationale as regards to rural and community-based development, but to protect these resources will ensure the sustainability of the development. It's very important to remind that these 3 rationales or expected effects are only expected effects. So only when they are achieved, the GI has expressed its full potential as a territorial resource for development, but it is not always the case. And sometimes we have the 3 impacts, visible or ongoing, but sometimes only 2, and sometimes only 1. And also sometimes the geographical indication that has been registered will just remain an unused or underused resource. This is explained by the fact that the registration itself will not bring a lot in terms of local development. So to register is not sufficient. It really depends on how the local public and private actors will use the GI after registration. So the geographical indication is just a tool that the local stakeholders can use or not. So the transformative potential of GIs must be activated by the local stakeholders. And if they do not activate this potential, then it will just remain what we call sleeping GIs. And it is the topic of the next presentation. So thank you very much.